Good afternoon and welcome along, everybody. My name is Jeremy Carter and I'd like to welcome you to our 10 top tax and finance tips to help your business thrive webinar. If you can hear me okay, if you could just type a little okay in the chat box, that would be fantastic. Over the next hour, really looking forward to spending some time with you. We are reaching that special time of year called tax time. And for business owners, this is a great opportunity to look at our scorecard. And this webinar is really designed to give you some practical strategies to make the most of this particular tax time and also to take your businesses to the next level. I'm presenting this webinar on behalf of the Blacktown City Council Economic Development Department as part of the Business Success Program, a whole series of webinars and workshops designed to support local business owners. With me today is also Linden and Regina from the Australian Taxation Office, who will be talking some more about some of the compliance obligations and other things to actually look out for in our businesses. For those of you into social media, we have a hashtag for today, which is hashtag BBSP. That stands for Blacktown Business Success Program. Again, many of you are here probably through the word of mouth from the other workshops that we've actually completed. Today's webinar will go for about an hour. It is designed to be interactive, so please keep your microphones muted. But if you have questions along the way, please type them into the chat box and we'll do the very best we can to answer as many as we can during the webinar today. And we may stay on the line for a few minutes actually after the conclusion of today and answer some more questions that you have. There is also a link that I've put in the chat box to complete a survey about what you actually got out of the webinar today. So I've already put the link there just in case that you need to leave early. We are also recording this webinar, so we will be making a replay available to attendees as well. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, so I'm the CEO or Chief Enthusiasm Officer of Rapport Leadership International. And as an organisation, we work with businesses to really deliver both training and coaching to empower business owners, leaders and executives to be able to go to that next level. So I started originally as a computer engineer and went to work in the corporate world, but left the corporate world about 15 years ago to become a business coach. My passion is really working with small to medium enterprises to help them go to the next level. So what I basically like doing is helping business owners get a big tax problem. Today we're going to talk about some of the things we can potentially do to mitigate the tax problems. And again, in its own right, I don't believe tax is a problem at all. We live in one of the best countries in the world, and tax is part of what we do for the privileges we have of living here, and also to support the quality of life that we have as Australians. Okay. I'd also like to introduce Linden and Regina. Linden, are you on the line?
I certainly am. Hello, and hello everybody. It's fantastic to see you all here. It's a great turnout.
Fantastic. Well, really excited to have Linden along with us today because she works in the Small Business Experience Department. And the Australian Taxation Office is all about, I think, following the trend of Service New South Wales. I still remember the first day I'd been to a motor registry and then they relaunched under Service New South Wales, and I walked in the front door and there was a concierge there waiting to help me. And the concierge said to me, well, how can I help you today? And I almost fell over backwards. And I think it's just been amazing how so many of the government departments have now actually changed their focus to being service-based organisations. So Linden is part of that in terms of helping to make the ATO more accessible to business owners and in terms of being able to ensure that we get the support that we need, the support and advice to ensure our businesses grow and thrive. I'd also like to acknowledge Trevor Oldfield, I can see, has logged on today, and also Frank Webb from the Greater Business Blacktown Chamber. So wonderful to have you along, and once again, thank you very much for inviting your members to come along and join us here today. For those of you who haven't already been along, I highly recommend getting along to a Blacktown Business Chamber event. They're a lot of fun and you meet some fabulous people. The Business Success Program is only happening through the kind sponsorship of CGU Insurance as part of their commitment to building the stronger and safer communities and increasing business resilience. CGU offers insurance to cover vehicles, property, travel, although not much of that's going on at the moment, lifestyle, and also business. So if you're ever looking for new insurance or would like a complimentary business review, there is an option in the feedback form to tick the box, and someone from CGU will be in contact to provide a competitive quote for you. The Blacktown Business Success Program, of course, is a series of workshops, in-person workshops. However, earlier this year when COVID-19 came along, we had to transition to more of a webinar-based format. But the great news is that we're actually going to be back in September in the in-person workshop format. Today, I also want to make sure to let you know that we are talking general advice here today. So we may be talking some strategies which may or may not be applicable for your business. So prior to implementing any of these, we do recommend getting specific advice around this. So what we're going to talk about today, firstly, how do we give you a tax problem? How do we increase the level of profit in your business to the point where you need to actually think about how do you manage it in the right way? We're going to talk about some of the different business structures that will provide tax efficiency, some of our business registration and reporting obligations. We'll talk a little bit about cash flow, and cash flow really is the lifeblood of our business. So there's some great things that we can do to make it a little bit easier for you. We'll talk a little bit about some of the grants and incentives that will help us through these challenging times. And then Linden's going to be talking in more detail about some of the deductible expenses that you may not be aware that you can claim. And also, I'm sure some of you will have some questions about the new working from home arrangements and the fact that we'll be able to actually claim a deduction if we have been working from home during COVID-19. If any of you go a little bit balmy about collecting all your receipts, we're going to talk about some paperless solutions to make bookkeeping easier, simpler, and more efficient for you. And we'll also talk about 3 opportunities that as business owners you would really be foolish not to consider before end of financial year. So there's some things we can do before next Monday that can definitely put us in a better tax position. And a couple of tax apps that you may not be aware of to make life easier, and also where to get some more help if you need it. So that's a pretty packed schedule. So let's just dive right in and first talk a little bit about how do we grow our businesses. And over the last 15 years as a business coach, I've lost count of the number of times that business owners have come to me and said, Jeremy, can you help me to double the size of my business? And the answer is, well, yes, I can, but why would you want to do that? What about if we could halve the size of your business and double your profit? Would that be a better outcome? And so often people in small business get caught up in the idea that a big business is a better business. But I want to put that in context and to help you understand that turnover at the end of the day is vanity. It doesn't matter how much you're turning over. What's really critical is the level of profit that you're bringing in. And also, are we making sure that we have the right level of cash flow to be able to support our business when we go through challenges? In life and in business, there's what's called the seasons. So currently we're in winter, and you know, one of the things we know is that in business sometimes we go through periods of winter as well. But following winter, we always have spring, and then we have summer. And one of the fatal traps business owners sometimes fall into when things are going really, really well, when it is summer, is they fail to plan appropriately for the autumn and winter that can also follow. You may have heard the statistic, 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years, and of the remaining 20%, 80% of those probably go out of business in the next 5 years. And realistically, stress and cash flow are the two that lead to that. So we want to talk today about some things that you can implement in your businesses today that can make a big difference to your cash flow and to your level of profitability. So first things first, it always surprises me the number of business owners who say to me, well, the numbers are my accountant's job. I just hand him all the stuff at the end of financial year and he tells me how I did. And there are accountants out there who are quite compliance-based accountants. The challenge, however, with accounting is it's like driving in a car very quickly while looking in the rear view mirror. It tells you what has happened, not what is happening and what will happen. And the more we can actually leverage some of the modern accounting systems, the more we can get real-time data on what's going on. But I also want to talk to you today about the importance of planning for what you want to happen. With modern accounting software, like for example, Xero and QuickBooks and MYOB Online now, it makes it very, very simple for you to keep your financials up to date, to be able to very quickly get a picture of your financial situation. Your three most important documents in your business, of course, are your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow statement. And it's really critical that you look at these on a regular basis. And these are kind of like, if we take the racing analogy, these are kind of like the pit board that they hold up to the drivers to give you some feedback on how you've been performing. In tough times, we need to really stay on top of our cash flow, and because we need to be concerned not just with paying our creditors on time, but also making sure that the people who owe us money pay us on time. So really important to stay up to date and on top of your cash flow. The longer you leave invoices to follow up, typically the longer it will take to get paid. A big thing to look out for is beware of taking drawings as income or using your business account for personal expenses. It may seem like it's easy to do. However, what you can do is create all sorts of tax problems for yourself through doing this. So one of the recommendations I always put in place when working with business owners is to say, one of your biggest goals is to make sure that you have 3 months operating expenses sitting in your bank account. So for all of your fixed expenses, things like your rent, your electricity, wages, if you can actually have that set aside, what that allows you to do is to not take on clients that you shouldn't take on, and it gives you a lot more financial stability. One of the very simple ways to make sure you have better cash flow is to set yourself up a profit account and to automatically transfer across somewhere between 15 and 20% of whatever money came into the business for that month. And what this does is it means that you already have set aside money for tax, money for VAS, money for other unexpected expenses that have come up. This is all about paying yourself first. So these are 5 very simple steps in terms of basic business financial mastery. You may have heard the saying, failing to plan is planning to fail. So just running these reports is not enough. We also need to ask ourselves the questions around, well, what's working well and what's working not well? Did we have a budget? Did we meet it? Did we exceed it, or did we not do well enough? How's our cash looking? Are our expenses in line with expectations? You know, again, if our revenue drops substantially, we immediately need to look at how do we trim our expenses as well. And for any serious business, it's really important that you develop a budget. You know, and this is equivalent to if you're building a house to have a blueprint. The budget is simply about planning how much revenue you're expecting to come in, how much expenses it's going to cost in order for your business to be able to deliver the services for that revenue, and what the profit is that you're forecasting to take out the other end. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And when it comes to financials, it's really important that you operate from a position of, I know. It always rings alarm bells for me when I speak to a business owner and they start using the language, I think. And I say to them, well, what's your business break-even point? How much do you need to turn over each month for your business to break even? They're like, well, I don't know, or I think. One of the critical things to understand with successful business owners is they know exactly how much money they need to bring in how much money is forecast to come in, and what's sitting in their bank account at any given time. Because when we know these numbers, it empowers us to make better business decisions about the things we need to do or not do in order to be able to achieve our results. So I want to give you a very quick and simple way with which you can increase your revenue and your profits. And one of the challenges when we look at growing a business is if we want to increase revenue, we actually can't. It's an outcome. If we want to increase our profits, we can't control that either. And the same thing goes with new customers. So there's a few models out there, and this is a pretty interesting one to look at in terms of how do we grow your business. Remember I said you can't have new customers? The thing we ask ourselves is what happens before we get new customers? Well, marketing needs to generate leads. Number two, our sales department needs to do its work in converting those leads into customers. When those two things work well together, we'll have plenty of new customers. To get from customers to turnover, it's going to come down to how often those customers buy from us and how much they spend each time. And to get from turnover to profit, it's going to be all about the profit margin that we're able to get on the products that we have. There's no such thing as an overnight success. In fact, most people that you see as overnight successes have put in 7 to 10 years hard work. But one of the things I want to remind you about is the power of small to influence large. The power of small improvements can significantly transform your business. So this is a very simple example using that 5 ways, those 5 numbers in your business. If you had a small business that was generating 1,000 leads a year, 1 in 4 of those was turning into customers. They were buying from you almost monthly at about $100 a month. This could be, for example, a gymnasium membership. So this small business is turning over $250,000 after covering expenses. The overall profit is just over $62,000. So what would happen if we increased each one of those 5 areas by just 10%? So if we were to do that, bring in 1,100 leads, use a slightly better sales script, we'll learn to sell better, our customers would go from 250 to 302. If we focused on getting people to buy from us just once more a year and spending 10% more, our revenue has climbed from 250,000 to 366,000. That's a 46% increase. If we focus on profit, which is one of the critical things, you can see profits gone from 62,000 to 100,000. That's a 61% increase in profit. Did we change anything major? No. But what this is about is really understanding the mechanics of business. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and you won't be able to control it. What if, just for fun, you had a 50% increase in a business, bringing in 1,500 leads a year, converting 1 in 3 of those? Okay, suddenly we've got $1 million business with almost a $500,000 profit. So it's not about getting there overnight. It's about you focusing on improving small things, one thing at a time, and that will take your business forwards. I remember I had a client once in the civil industry, and he said to me, "Jeremy, I've got the best accountant ever." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said to me, "Well, I go and visit him every year, and he says, 'Charles, how much tax would you like to pay?' And I said, 'Well, why would you say that's good?' And he's like, 'Well, that's great. I don't like having to pay tax.'" Here's one of the things. We live in an amazing first world country with lots of privileges, lots of benefits. And one of the great things about Australia is there's some amazing social support for people who are, I guess, on the lower part of the ladder. And, you know, minimizing that gap between rich and poor actually creates a stronger, safer community. I think most of you know this quote by Kerry Packer, and it's interesting what he said. I think it's important that we all pay our fair share of tax. However, it's a bit silly if we pay a lot more tax than we need to. So we want to talk today about some things we can do to make sure we're paying the right amount of tax. So if you go to the ATO website, which by the way is just fabulous, there are so many resources there. It's important to understand that when we earn money as taxpayers, as employees, there's these things called individual tax rates, different tax brackets. So we don't pay any tax typically on our first 18,000 of income. Tax rate then goes to 19 cents in the dollar from 18 to 37,000, climbing to 32, 37, and then up to 45 cents in the dollar anytime we're earning over $180,000 a year. So the idea here is to really spread the tax burden across taxpayers. So people who are earning more do proportionally pay a little bit more. One of the things to also keep in mind is that companies pay a tax rate of about 27.5%. So when it comes to minimizing our tax, what we need to do is a little bit of planning and a little bit of thinking about how do we make sure with this entity that most of us are trading, called a company, how do we make sure that we balance things right in terms of paying the right amount of tax to be able to manage our cash flow and also to be able to provide for the lifestyle that we need. One of the big areas in which many starting out business owners fall into is they make the mistake of thinking that the money in the bank account is theirs. And they just start taking out all this money as drawings. And then they get to the end of their first financial year of business and they lodge their tax return and suddenly they've got a tax bill. And then on top of that, the ATO says, well, you had a fabulous year last year. So what we're now going to start doing is charging you some provisional tax. That is, we'll get you paying some tax in advance. So it's really important that we actually plan for this. And if you have a good accountant, they will really also hold your hand and help to educate you in terms of making sure that you don't arrive at the end of your financial year and start putting off your returns because you haven't planned for tax in the right way. So one of the critical things when we start our business is to get some proper advice around the right sort of business structure. For many people starting out, they start as a sole trader. And while this is a low-cost entity, there's some significant disadvantages in terms of personal liability and taxation levels that you can pay through using a sole trader entity. There's what's called a partnership, where we go into partnership with another person to start a business. We could also trade through a trust, or we could trade through a proprietary limited company. And one of the things with the proprietary limited company is it provides us the protection of limited liability. On the ATO website, there's a great publication about tax basics for small business that goes into these structures in a little bit more detail. How do you know what's the right structure for you? Well, again, my suggestion is you need to actually seek some advice, because it's going to come down to how much money are you expecting to make? What are your objectives? What's the level of risk in the business? There are some accountants who can get a bit excited with startup businesses and want to set up 3 or 4 entities to begin with to provide the ultimate protection. So we need to actually balance some of the risk versus the setup costs and the ongoing costs. We also need to think about distribution flexibility. Where do we want to be able to pay money to? So one of the great things with a trust, for example, is it enables you to distribute income to direct family members. And this can be an opportunity, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, to be able to do some income splitting. Asset protection. This is also really critical. You know, despite our best intentions, sometimes in business it can go wrong. And it's critical that, you know, when it comes to assets like your home or other significant assets that you're buying, that you investigate what are the right sort of structures for ownership to be able to support you there. And also tax minimization. When we're buying assets, we need to think about capital gains tax or other tax that may result from that. So I'll share with you a really simple example of what happens if you think a little bit about tax versus not thinking about tax. So this example here was if you were a sole trader with an annual net income of $200,000, okay, we can see off the ATO website, it breaks down the different tax brackets. exactly how much income tax would be payable. So on 200,000 as a PAYG employee or a sole trader, you'd be paying $63,000 a year of tax. However, if you are trading through a trust, one of the opportunities you could do is actually income splitting, where instead of paying $200,000 to yourself, you pay $100,000 to yourself and $100,000 to your wife. Let's pretend for the purposes of this exercise that she's not working. So on $100,000 income, that's $25,000 worth of tax each. Times 2, your total tax bill for the year would be $48,994. Would you rather pay $49,000, let's call it tax, or $63,000 tax? That's a very substantial difference. And this just comes down to having the right sort of structure and a little bit of planning. So this calculator is off moneysmart.gov.au /income tax calculator. So we're going to talk a bit about some of our taxation obligations. And most of us, when we became salaried employees, we got our first tax file number. To start our business, we get a ABN, we register for goods and services tax. We then, when we exceed a certain threshold, need to start lodging business activity statements to report the GST collected and paid out. When we put on employees, we need to start looking at the pay-as-you-go withholding, making sure that we're able to pass that money onto the tax office for the salaried employees in our company. Fringe benefits tax. Linden's going to talk some more about allowable expenses and things that we need to be aware of. Also, in a company, if we've got a vehicle, it's essential that we keep a vehicle logbook and we keep up to date with our bookkeeping and annual tax returns. So I might pass across to Linden to talk a little bit more about some of these obligations. Hang on, you're muted.
Okay, here I am. I'm ready to go. Hello, Blacktown. Lovely to have you on board today, and thanks for tuning in. Hey, look, taxation and your obligations. So plenty of stuff on ato.gov.au. That's the first thing I'll tell you. But also, I speak to a lot of clients around Australia, and they say your website is like a minefield. So the best way to find information is head into that search box on ato.gov.au. They've very much refined the information that you need to find, and the key wording is a lot better than what it used to be. It used to be quite lumpy, and we've worked on it, and it's certainly getting a lot better. So what you can do in relation to, especially when you're starting up a business, you know, Jeremy was mentioning before about all your business obligations that you should register for, you know, your ABN number, your tax file number. I see so many businesses that literally wake up one day and they go, oh, right, I'm going to start a business today. So they go and register for everything. Then they start receiving activity statements and they literally look at the activity statement and they go, I don't know what that is. So they throw it. Then they get a letter from us 6 months down the track. So what they've gone and done, they've gone and registered, for example, pay-as-you-go withholding. But they haven't employed anyone. So when you're starting up your business or setting up your business, just start simple. Seek professional advice like Jeremy was saying in relation to everything that's on your screen at the moment. Okay, next slide, Jeremy. All right, so introduction to business records. We see 60% of small businesses fail within the first 3 years of business, and you know why? It comes down to record keeping. So I come from an auditing space. I'm in education now, but I've sat in the auditing space for a long time. One of the biggest things that I see is people, they don't keep their records. And so how do you know how much income's coming in as to what your expenses are going out? How can you compare? How can you make your business better? Well, you can't if you're not keeping good records. One of the things Jeremy mentioned before about separate bank accounts. So have it, I think Jeremy, you called it a profit account. We recommend you have separate accounts, have a GST account, have a pay-as-you-go withholding account, have your own account, and obviously have your business account. Because at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter when you go and consolidate, or perhaps it come tax time, you've got to sit down and go through your bank account. Like if you've got one bank account, you go through with your good old highlighter and you work out what's private and what's business. That's painful, that's messy, that takes time. And if you put your money into separate bank accounts, you can see it grow. You can see where you're going. And this is what Jeremy keeps saying. Visualization is really important in small business. So from a legal requirement, another thing I often come across when I've been auditing, invoices that aren't in English. If your invoice isn't in English, you can't have that invoice. You can't claim it as a deduction. And that's really important in the fact that if you aren't dealing with overseas suppliers, may I suggest that if you do get an invoice that's not in English, go back to your overseas supplier and say to them, hey, use Google and make sure that you translate the information into English. How long to keep your records? Well, I've got a 10-year-old son and I always go high five. So 5 years you keep your records for. It's not 7, used to be 7, but now it's 5. Make sure that we can't tell you how to keep your records. No way is right and no way is wrong. So if you're still in that manual phase, you've got a cash book, you've got your receipts file, you like that manual visualization, that's fine, just as long as it works for you. We are recommending more and more online channels. There's some great accounting software out there that can help you along the way. If you're an individual or a sole trader, we're going to talk a little bit more about the ATO app in just a minute. So slide on in, Jeremy. Loving your button pushing. Very good.
Alrighty.
All right. So allowable tax deductions. The biggest thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to say it from a compliance space, make sure whatever you choose to deduct is actually used for your business. Sometimes we purchase things and we use partly for private use and partly for business use. Make sure that you make that very clear line in the sand. Is it 40% private and 60% business? Perhaps it's 50-50, perhaps it's 100% for business. So good old saying, and I like to keep tax simple because as you know, tax is big, right? So what I like to say is that if you've purchased it for your business, that means that you can claim it for your business. But if you're using it for private, you need to apportion. Superannuation contributions, obviously they can be a tax deduction as well. I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics about this because there is a lot of information around it. Simply type in superannuation into ato.gov.au search box and it'll come up with all the information you need. All right, Jeremy, keep pushing that button.
Oh, before we push on, Linden,
Yeah.
I just want to put a plug in for super. And we talked about tax rates, and many people forget about the concessional tax rate of 15% when we actually push some money into super up to, I think, around the $25,000 a year mark. The great thing about superannuation is that your money grows inside the super fund, and again, it's only subject to a 15% tax rate. So this is a great way to actually build your financial independence towards retirement. For business owners down the track, if you can accumulate enough superannuation to look at buying your own business property using your super fund, this is another great investment. And we use our vehicle as a business to be able to do that. So if you haven't put in any super this year, I encourage you, look to see what you can put in, even if just a small amount. A small amount done regularly will make a massive impact in terms of what happens when you reach 67.
I think that's a really good addition, Jeremy. I really, really do, because what we're seeing at the moment is there's a lot of early release from superannuation, and that's a worry for down the track. So yeah, I totally back you there, Jeremy. Great idea.
If you've sat down with your accountant, and you ought to do this really 4 to 6 weeks before the end of financial year, if you've got a big tax problem, you might look at prepaying some of next year's expenses. And we're going to talk about another initiative that's come through as part of COVID-19, which is a huge opportunity as well.
All right, so let's head into keeping your business records. As I was saying to you before, the days of the shoebox, it's gone. The days of the glove box, it's gone. As you know, you go to your, let's use Bunnings. I love Bunnings. So you go to Bunnings, you buy what you need for your business, you walk out, you shove the receipt in your glove box. It's you're out here in Penrith or Blacktown or wherever you are. We're going to be hitting 47 degrees. That receipt fades really, really quickly. So we're trying to change the behaviours of how you're keeping your business records. And this little baby, the ATO app, is certainly a great way for you to be able to keep your records because it's on your phone. So you can go into your Google Play Store, any Play Store on any smart device, download ATO app. I can see actually a few of you are doing it right now. Go you guys. So with this ATO app, particularly if you're an individual or a sole trader, so let's use Bunnings again. We go back to Bunnings, we get something for our business, we get the receipt fades within 5 minutes. At the counter, get in a really healthy habit. Take a photo of the receipt. You can actually record your income, record your expenses, take photos with both. You can record your kilometres. So I did notice, Jeremy, you said your vehicle logbook. So let's get a bit more savvy and go digital because you've always got your phone on you. And with the GPS side of it, it'll track your kilometres from wherever you're going to wherever you're going for work purposes. Obviously, you only claim work-related kilometres. Now, with this app, what happens is the data goes up into the cloud. It stays there until tax time. Come tax time, the app's going to ask you, as well as my tax, it's going to say to you, would you like me to import the data from the cloud and pre-fill your income tax return automatically? So that means you're not sitting down at the end of the financial year doing your income, doing your expenses, oh, how many kilometres did I do, where have I gone? Are you ripping yourself off on your kilometres? Because we do see a lot of that as well. So this little app will pre-fill your income tax return for individuals and sole traders, but we're not leaving partnerships or companies out and trusts out of this as well. So you can still use the app. What will happen is that you'll have the opportunity to be able to bring that information down from the cloud in Excel format and deliver it straight to your accountant. So it's a nice, easy, quick way to be able to record your tax. Gone are the days having to sit down for, hours on end, frustrating, pulling your hair out, and often missing out on claimable items because you haven't done it along the way. Allow me to put the challenge out to you for the 2021 financial year to download this app and use it. Okay, Jeremy, got anything to add on that one?
No, it's an amazing example of how technology is making life easier.
Yeah, it's
to preface this next slide. I had another client in the trades-based industry, and he had 3 vans on the road, and I asked him for his business financials. And it showed that he was turning over $60,000 a year. And
did you say tradie?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just making that point. Yes. Keep going.
And I said to him, well, you told me you have 3 investment properties. How are you affording all of these? And he said, well, actually, my income's about $300,000 a year, but in my industry, everyone does cash.
Of course they do. Everyone does cash. My FPOS machine doesn't work. It broke.
And I said to him, well, here's the thing. If the ATO comes and asks you, how are you paying for those 3 negatively geared investment properties, and it's found out that you're deliberately avoiding tax through collecting cash and paying your employees cash, you could lose the lot. It's time for you to turn over a new leaf. And he said, well, you don't understand, Jeremy. Everyone in this industry does it. And I said, well, here's the thing. It's time for you to be different. It's time for you to actually differentiate your business and stand for quality. People will pay more if they see that they're getting a better service. So it took a bit of effort, but changed his mindset, changed the way he sold. He was still turning over great amounts of money, but more importantly, he was sleeping at night, not worrying about, gee, what happens if I get caught?
Yeah, absolutely. And kudos to you, Jeremy. We need more people out there changing the mindsets and the behaviours of the way people work. The only thing, you've pretty much covered this slide, but I'm going to put my compliance hat on and give you a bit of a spin. So when your tax returns go through, when you lodge your tax returns, they go through risk data models. we gear our risk data models up to pick up certain things that stand out. The biggest thing that stands out is that everyone claims their expenses, but not everyone claims their income. So Jeremy's right. I always give the example of my mate Bob, who owns a Chinese restaurant. Bob went and bought $50,000 worth of rice, but he only declared, what was it, $22,000 in his tax return. First question is, how can you afford to buy $50,000 worth of rice if you're only earning $22,000 worth of income? Then we're going to go and look at your personal living expenses. We can see you live in a 4-bedroom McMansion, you've got a boat, you've got X amount of cars. We can see how many times you've been in and out of the country. So Jeremy's right. Get it right from the first step. And benchmarks is how we can work out in relation to where your business is sitting. I'm just going to give sorry, Jeremy, I'm just going to give a quick education spin on benchmarks as well. So if you're just about to start setting up a business, or you're looking into getting into something different, may I suggest that you go to the benchmarks, gain an understanding of how much people earn and how much they spend for that industry type. So if you want to get into a cafe, a restaurant, perhaps an accountancy firm, you can gain a very clear idea in relation to how much you could make and how much you'll be looking to spend. Okay, Jeremy, back to you with the slides.
And one other point, Linden, is benchmarks. Like, many accountants also have access to industry benchmarks. So it's good to actually get your accountant to say, can you do a benchmark for me about where my business sits versus others in my industry? There are some actual benchmarks available online that you may be able to get, but this is a great way for you to understand best practice. Am I spending too much on my expenses? My rule of thumb for any small business is it ought to be able to pay you what you're worth. That is, if someone else was hiring you, and it ought to be able to deliver at least a 10% net profit on the bottom line. If it can't do that, then it's not really a business, and it ought to be able to do substantially better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm just going to pop in this link. I've just brought it up on ato.gov.au. Go in there, have a sneak peek, because it's really quite interesting. You can gain a great idea in relation to what business can make what sort of money. All right, JobKeeper. How's JobKeeper going? I'm in my 14th week of lockdown. About 6 weeks ago, we hit the absolute bottom in Australia with small business. JobKeeper was just about to start trickling out naturally from we kind of saw from the 1st of March, a lot of people were seeing what's happening around the world with COVID, and they started lodging. Come the 27th of March, when the restrictions came down upon us, we had a lot more business lodge. And so lodging causes big debts. It's quite normal, and I've just done one today, a payment arrangement for $686,000. So everyone who hadn't lodged for a long time, they went and lodged everything. They lodged all their outstanding income tax returns, they lodged all their outstanding activity statements, and boom, they've got a massive debt. So with JobKeeper, what we've seen, it's come out at a time where businesses were flat. You know, they were sad. They were either shut their doors for good, or they'd shut their doors for, they didn't know how long. So what we've seen with JobKeeper, it's enabled businesses to get back up on their feet, and just to give them that little bit of help. Now with Cash Flow Boost, this has been another massive biggie. Cash Flow Boost has really enabled businesses to move through COVID, to climb. I call it climbing out of the COVID hole. So Cash Flow Boost plus JobKeeper, and don't forget JobKeeper fortnights are still going to be paid up until September at this stage. And I say at this stage because I was on a video hookup very much like this with Deborah Jenkins. Now Deborah Jenkins is the Small Business Commissioner. She's the one that signs all your letters. I asked Deborah the question because she's mixing it up with all the pollies, and I said to her, do you think JobKeeper is going to go past September? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? Because there are a lot of the questions that I'm getting from small business. She was much like me, Linden. We could only hope that JobKeeper will keep going. It may, the face of JobKeeper may change. So just to give that transparency to you right here, right now, we don't know what's happening past September. We understand that businesses are going to need further assistance. So watch ato.gov.au, watch your media and your press releases, because no doubt something will come out about JobKeeper in the upcoming weeks, perhaps months past, leading up to September. Instant asset write-offs. Let's have a yarn about that. So instant asset write-offs has gone up to $150,000. Now, $150,000, Josh Frydenberg came out with and said, look, we're hoping that this is going to take the instant asset write-off up to 150 will be able to be claimed up until the 30th of December this year. Let me make it very clear, that hasn't got royal assent. So Josh Frydenberg threw it out there, but a lot of people didn't realise, has that got royal assent? Is it actually going to happen? Or is it something that needs to be passed as law? Well, it still needs to be passed up to December, right? But instant asset write-off, think about this. If you've started your business, or perhaps you've been running a very successful business and COVID's really, really hurt, if you have purchased some assets, don't forget to actually look at that asset and go, okay, well, if that's fully for my business, take advantage of this instant asset write-off. Especially we've been hearing a lot of companies have been upgrading their vehicles. So that's certainly been a big one within the instant asset write-off space. I've also got a link to add for the write-off. Jeremy, I'll let you go into a little bit more about the tax write-offs, and I'll bring up that link and pop that in the chat box.
Fantastic. And, it's a bit of a no-brainer. If you had a $50,000 profit sitting there in your company and your company vehicle was due to be turned over, you can lease a new company vehicle for $400 or $500 a month and immediately claim the full depreciation on that asset if you buy it before the end of financial year. For larger assets, if you're buying assets, before I move on, this also applies to both new and second-hand assets, which is a pretty generous offer. For larger assets over 150,000, there's accelerated depreciation. So we're allowed to claim 57.5% in the first year, and then 30% of the written down value in subsequent years. So that's a brilliant incentive to get us thinking about investing in our businesses. And one of the things that you find with successful business owners is they don't pull out all the cash in their business. For years and years, they continue to invest back in their businesses, to develop their teams, to develop their systems, to get it to where they want it to be.
All right, so thank you for that, Jeremy, and I've popped some more information into the chat box for you, just balancing that instant asset write-off. Okay, so also we did mention previously before in relation to your superannuation. So you are able to apply for early release of superannuation, but it must be done by the 30th of June. So if you're in that situation where you need to, withdraw a little bit of extra money out of your super, please do that before the end of June. Do you want to talk anything about the New South Wales payroll tax? Because I think that is sort of a financial background spin.
I think it was just more a reflection of doing everything. I was very impressed with how the government responded in terms of the levels of financial assistance that have been rolled out to business to really support keeping on as many employees as possible to continue investing in the future of business in Australia. And some people may split hairs and say they haven't got 100% correct, but hindsight's 20/20. So one of the great things I thought the New South Wales government did was they waived the payroll tax for March, April, and May. And the ATO, I don't know, people seem to be sometimes negative about the ATO, but in my experience, I've had a few overdue tax bills. And every time I've rung and said, listen, I can't make it on the date, can you help me? Their staff have been nothing short of amazing in terms of offering payment plans and thinking outside the box solutions. So the ATO is definitely flexible at the moment with offering payment plans or delayed payments up until September, which is fantastic.
Actually, Jeremy, I'm going to add to that. So I've I've had the opportunity to be able to outbound call a number of drought, bushfire and COVID affected small businesses. And as I was saying to you previously, you know, when COVID hit, everyone's thought, I've got to lodge everything. So obviously, as I was saying, that brought on a lot of debt. What I've been doing, I look at the industry type, I gain an understanding about each business. I've been tailoring payment plans. Look, they have been a little bit outside the box. However, I have been in cahoots with our debt executive with the ATO, and they've sort of turned around to me and said, well, Linden, how did you get that payment arrangement done? You know, normally people would back off from that, particularly in relation to the timing with COVID. What I've been doing and what the ATO was starting to do, because we can see you're struggling, we're doing smaller payments per month for sort of the first 3 to 6 months to allow you that time to climb out of your COVID hole. Once that time passes and you know, you're lodging your BAS and perhaps you're earning a bit more money, business is getting back to usual, we're going to increase your payments again. It's not going to be a massive increasement. Also, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. And this is the biggest thing. I think people think when they speak to our debt departments, you know, they sort of have an anxiety attack and you know, and they just go with what we say. Don't be afraid to speak up. Say to that person at the ATO, hey, I can't afford to pay this in 6 months and I can't afford to do that upfront payment of a certain percentage of the payment arrangement. What you need to say, and I'm not going to say ask, I'm going to say request for longer payment arrangements. You can go up to 24 months. If you've got a large debt and you're in extenuating circumstances and you're not afraid to tell us why, because if we know why, we can help you. So just by chance, if that person turns around and says to you, no, it's got to be paid within 6 months, don't be afraid to ask for their manager, because I've been a manager in the call centres. I understand in relation to the powers that we've got to be able to help you. If you don't ask, you do not receive. It's the good old saying. Jeremy, anything more to add?
I love that saying. You know, if you don't ask, the answer's always no.
That's right. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. All right, employees working from home. So, yeah, that's me. So, what the biggest change in this space is, if you are working from home, from the 1st of March to the 30th of June, you can claim 80 cents per hour for your running costs. So for an example, we got our power bill the other day. You guys probably would have gotten yours as well. I noticed, or I calculated, our power bill had gone up by $35 for the period that I'd been home. I'm vigilant with lights, I'm vigilant with everything, but at the end of the day, that would be about right for the 14th week at being at home. Let me put my compliance hat on here, because we see this a lot. People say they're working from home, right? Now, we know from your tax return that you've got a spouse, you may have 3 kids, yeah? So we know if you go and put that you're working from home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we then turn around and ask you, well, who feeds your children? Do you not sleep? Do you not shower? So be reasonable, be fair and reasonable when you're claiming what you're claiming. So just going back to that 80 cents per hour, you'll need to use the fixed rate from the 1st of June 2019 to, now I have to ask this, Jared, this year was is a leap year, isn't it? I had to do it on my knuckles, you know, that old leap year thing that you do on your knuckles? Yeah, that's what I thought. So from the 1st of July 2019 through to the 29th of February, you claim 52 cents per hour for every hour that you're working from home. From the 1st of March through to the 30th of June, you can claim 80 cents per hour if you're working from home. So that's probably one of the larger changes within the deduction space. Now, in relation to, electricity, cleaning costs, I'll talk about phone and internet in a minute. That's be very careful with that, because within small business, we say that you must have an office that is wholly and solely dedicated for business purposes. don't suggest that you do your work from the kitchen table, or especially if you've got a permanent at-home business. Try and have a wholly and solely area dedicated, so it makes it easier for you to claim. So if your home is 600 square meters, your office is 60 square meters, well, you're going to claim 10% of your running costs. So that's sort of a reasonably easy example to be able to give. Phone and internet expenses, a portion. Okay, I have 2 phones, which is a pain to carry around. Everyone keeps telling me, go and get a dual SIM. But make sure whatever you claim is for business expenses only. In relation to your home office equipment, I've never worked from home in my life. I've always gone to the office. So when I was sent home with my tail between my legs when COVID hit on the 27th of March, I thought, oh, I can't work off an iPad. So I went out and got a hard drive, got some screens, sort of made the office look all pretty and workable. So I'm going to claim them as well. All right, Jeremy, keep heading along with those slides. If you don't have anything to add, I should say.
Previously, you had to be quite careful when claiming home office expenses, because you can have some implications around selling your home and capital gains tax. But anyhow, seek advice, and it's great to see this incentive to really support. And I've so loved working from home with my wife. My dog's been so happy, the kids have been happy, and I'm happy seeing this policy as well.
Yeah, well, look, I don't mind it, but I'm a little bit sick of my Great Dane at my window, licking the window. I've had to change positions of this camera because the Great Dane jumps up on the window and licks it during these types of webinars. So, yeah, I'm half-half. I'm missing my colleagues. All right, lodging your returns. So we have talked a little bit about this. If you're an individual or a sole trader, you can lodge your return through MyTax. If you are a partnership, company, or a trust, you can bring your data down from the cloud on that Excel spreadsheet format via the ATO app and give that to your accountant. Regardless, we really support and encourage the use of our tax agents. And make sure your tax agent is registered. I have come across, especially the last couple of weeks, a lot of, no, I'm not going to say a lot, there's just been a small handful of dodgy tax agents. So make sure that your tax agent is registered. Make sure that you feel comfortable to ask your tax agent questions, because that's the biggest thing. A relationship with your tax agent is like a relationship with your husband or your wife. Okay, happy wife, happy life, yeah? Make sure that if you are lodging your tax return through your accountant, as Jeremy says on this slide, you may have the opportunity to be able to lodge your income tax return up till the 15th of May, the next financial year. Anything to add on that, Jeremy?
Cheap advice isn't worth anything. It's probably going to cost you a lot of money. So my suggestion as well, you never want cheapest for bookkeeper or accountant. A good accountant will pay for themselves every day of the week. So definitely worth, if you don't feel like you've got a good accountant who's giving you advice, to look around and see what your options are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally support that. Tax payment deferrals. I'll touch on this for you, but this is where a lot of the power lays. Did you know that if you've received a failure to lodge on time penalty or general interest charges and you've paid them, did you know you can have them remitted? So you can send us a message via your business portal via MyGovID, because AusKey's now gone. So send us a message and say, hey, I can see on my statement of account in my portal that I've got $880 worth of failure to lodge on time penalties, or I've got an extra $13,000 in general interest charges that I've paid. Can I have that remitted? What does remitted mean? It means we give back the money to you. Okay, so never be afraid to ask for a remission. I've done a lot of remissions over the last couple of months, especially with bushfire affected and drought affected people. And I'll tell you something, it makes all the difference when they're going into payment arrangements. And it all we say is don't be afraid to ask. I'm going to keep saying that all the way through the webinar, and I know Jeremy will back me with that as well. All right, anything to add on that one? No, you're good to go. So reach out. People at the private tax officer just like me. We're here to help you. We're here to assist you. We're here to support you. We're here to guide you. But if you don't ask, you don't get. I'm going to place an email address into the chat box, and if you have any questions, often when we come to these types of forums and we think, oh, we should have asked that question, or perhaps you're like me and you're a thinker and you kind of wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, I should have asked that question. I'll give you my email address. Just make sure you place attention Linden in the subject heading line, and I'll be more than happy to pick that up for you and get your questions answered. But mostly, and I'm going to cut it off there, thank you. Thank you so much for coming along to this, Jeremy. Thank you incredibly. This has been a great experience. It's been great to see a lot of your faces. I recognise a lot of your names, Gus and Trevor. Last time we saw each other was at the Blacktown International Breakfast together. But look, it's been great to be able to be welcomed, warmly welcomed to this type of forum. We're always here. Don't hesitate to contact us. Back to you, Jeremy.
Fantastic, Linden, and thank you very much for coming on today. You're an absolute breath of fresh air and sunshine.
Oh, good. Excellent. Thank you.
So in coming to a close, I've got up on the screen the dates for the upcoming Business Success Program workshops. So these are all 2.5-hour workshops in person that will be held at the Max Weber Library. They're only $25 each. They will sell out quickly. We've got them starting from September the 1st. Also, due to seating restrictions, we're only going to be able to have 15 people per workshop. So if you're interested in learning some more skills to be able to support your business in the area of marketing, sales, hiring team, business planning, tender and grant writing, there's a workshop there for you. Also, if you know anyone who's looking at exiting the corporate world, or maybe has already and is looking to start their own business, we're putting on a special session, a webinar on the 7th of July at 7 p.m, how to start your new business. We will actually be making this available free. So watch your email inboxes and you will hear from Blacktown Council about these workshops and also that special Start Your Business webinar. Now, knowledge is not power. Knowledge only becomes powerful when we put it into action. So before you go back and get too busy in your businesses, take some time to go back over what you learned today and action the important points. If you haven't spoken to your accountant already, pick up the phone straight away and book in a time to do it. Think about some of the opportunities that we talked about today that will help you minimize your tax bill for this financial year and maximize your opportunity to take your business ahead in the next financial year.
Okay, well, we've run out of time. What I'll do is after the session, I'll go through all the questions. We actually have quite a few that have come through, and I probably...
There we go. Sorry about that. Someone unmuted themselves. There's a link in the chat box. If you click on that, that will take you to a SurveyMonkey survey. When you complete that, it will give you a link and you can instantly download a copy of the slide pack from today. Thank you, Linden, also for sharing all your knowledge. If you're interested in getting a little bit of help about your business to go to that next level, there's also a checkbox there if you'd like to be contacted by Rapport Leadership, and we'll tee up a time to have a little bit of a chat. Thank you all for your time today and for coming along to the webinar. It's been a fabulous time. Hope we can do this again soon, Linden. Take care, everyone.
Absolutely, and thanks Blacktown Council. You rock.
Absolutely.